On this week's full-time roundup, Premier League games do not disappoint. Bayer Leverkusen finally slip up. Barca get a much-needed win, and Inter continue their dominance in Serie A. We discuss all of this and much more. Full-time roundup starts right now. And welcome into this edition of the full-time roundup. Matt Gesslin here, as always, joined by my co-host, Daniel Brackett. Daniel, how are we doing today? I mean, I'm stoked. There was so many games. There was just craziness across the board, and it just seemed like this just cascaded from yesterday's games as well. We had also a bunch of other sports that were happening, that's some controversy and throughout the universe. So just chaos around the sports world today. But how are you doing this morning and things in your world from a hectic, crazy morning?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. I thought the Sunday slate was a little bit better than the Saturday slate. So, I mean, it was a crazy weekend of sports. So I wish they kind of divided those games up a little half and half. So I could have enjoyed more of the slate on Saturday. But all in all, it was a good weekend. Got to see Shane Gillis live last night. That was a lot of fun. And quick story before we kind of had go ahead and jump into the games. I went to Barcelona Wine Bar on Friday night.
Fancy,
pretty late reservation, and I ended up running into Bill Tioma, and I was like, I'm not going to approach him, but if he walks by, I'll just say hi, and end up talking to him for a little bit, and he ends up buying our table not one but two bottles of wine. So I mean, he probably spent $50 to $100 on that. So a stand-up guy, took pictures with all of us. So shout out you, Bill. I hope you have a great season. And just, when not your idols, but when you spend so much money and you spend a lot of time cheering for people and they kind of give you the time of day like that, I just think that's super cool.
For those of you who aren't aware, and I had to get downloaded by Daniel as well, Bill Tuiloma is a center back that played this year for Charlotte FC here in the Queen City. I believe he had started earlier in the season and then was, no longer a starter, maybe on the bench. I don't know. But a story that Daniel was very happy to tell me about. I give him a little bit of shit for it, but a cool story nonetheless. And when someone does that for you, definitely flowers thrown their way for just going out of their way and taking care of you guys like that. That was pretty nice of them. But of course, that led Daniel to have a little bit of a downer this morning and couldn't attend our viewing of the City Spurs match in Uptown Charlotte at Hooligans, one of the premier soccer spots in all of Charlotte. Daniel, this was an absolute darling of a game, and you could not write it up any better. Back and forth. Spurs come out of the gate. First 5 minutes, Sonny puts it in the back of the net. Sonny puts it again back in the net. 2 minutes later, just his own net. And it looked like this was off to the races, that Son was going to score 6 goals by himself in this one. And all joking aside, this match did live up to the hype all the way through and through. Fantastic from start to finish. Any initial takeaways as it really just kind of wrapped up here a few hours ago for us?
I mean, I just genuinely could not believe that Spurs tied this match. I mean, we both predicted before that Spurs would get battered.
We did.
And they got an early goal, and then it immediately got canceled out. And I was like, okay, well, now I feel like City are going to go try hard almost in a way and just absolutely kill them. And they had the chances in the first half. They hit the woodwork a couple times. Holland missed a sitter. So, I mean, it could have been 5 or 6 goals in the first half alone for both teams. And somehow the Spurs just kept themselves in this match the entire time. And when you score great goals like Giovanni Lo Celso's goal and then Dejan Kulusevski at like the heart or in the stoppage time with like a great header, he just wanted it more. And City are known for killing off their games. That's what they do, right? So once you get the first goal, it's almost impossible to stop them from scoring. And they've now, this is 3 draws in a row. It's now a reoccurring theme. Against Leipzig last week, we mentioned they went down 2 and came back, but there's a little blip here for City. And yes, they are missing a couple center mids, so that's definitely contributing to the issue. But they are not the same City that we are used to in seasons past.
Couldn't disagree with that statement, but they're still early. It's also a team that's going for a quad, if you remember that as well, which is pretty unheard of. So, it's still early in the season. They only trail Arsenal by 3 points now, which, even after 3 consecutive draws, they're still right there within touching distance of the top of the table. So it's hard to kind of give them too much flack for playing really, really well. They still played offensively, probably maybe better than what they've looked like last year with 7 goals and against Chelsea, against Spurs combined. And also, getting goals in the Champions League as well. I would say from my perspective, Daniel, this came down more to what Tottenham offered. I was really impressed by Postacoglu and the way that he continues to just play that style and kind of lives and dies by it. I thought, obviously the early goal kind of settles him down, gives him a little bit of breathing room. It obviously evaporated almost instantly with that follow-up right after. But I think it kind of gave them an opportunity to say, hey, if we go after City, they're vulnerable. We can get at them. We can still play our style. And yes, we may have a little bit of a risk by playing the way that we do, especially with the talent here. That obviously came to be when they gave up all those chances that you mentioned, but they still stuck to the script and they fought hard. And mentioned Kulusevski's goal at the end is exactly how Ange Postecoglou wants his team to play. Never give up and fight all the way through. And they fought all the way to the end, and a huge point on the road against arguably one of the best, if not the best team in all of Europe with an undermanned squad. Let's be honest. This Tottenham team was not fully fit, and they go in and they get a huge road point that could serve them a long way. Now, you want to, kind of look at the flip side, and could they have gotten all 3 points in this one? Possibly. But I think, going into it the way that we viewed this match, which was Spurs are going to get smoked, to kind of the result they did, was ultimate best case scenario for them today.
Yeah, and I'm going to draw just a little bit of comparison between, especially today, with what I saw with Tottenham. This season, or the start to the season, has shown me some shades of Jurgen Klopp when he first got to Liverpool. Now, he did right now. Big Ange does have a little bit more, I feel like, to work with, but when it comes to just the demeanor of the manager and how the team is playing, they just have so much belief, and it's come from their manager. And you see people who've had bad seasons or who aren't well known really stepping up, and everyone was given a clean slate. And you see the likes of Basuma and Lo Celso, who kind of people wrote them off at Spurs, and they've kind of been the most key players. And then you have big injuries, right? And I mean, that center back duo was atrocious when I saw that starting lineup, and I was thinking, oh God, this is not going to be good. But they just found a way, and it was kind of like the mentality monsters. And I'm really impressed with Ange, and I'm excited to see, especially for Spurs fans, to see where Big Ange can kind of take this team.
It will be interesting to see. And then, of course, the next step in this process is to build the squad the way that Klopp, you mentioned, and what they've done over there at Liverpool. And boy, to go from one fantastic game to another, Daniel, this didn't disappoint either. A 4-3 thriller for Liverpool against Fulham with some absolute crackers of goals from Liverpool. I think all 4 Liverpool goals were worldies. They were just wonder strikes across the board. And then, of course, though, there are some cracks that you have to look at from a Liverpool's perspective, especially as a fan, and ask yourself if there are some concerns here that, they continue to kind of be vulnerable at the back and give up some goals. And, if you're looking at trying to make a title run against an Arsenal team that is looking very, very strong right now, with obviously we've alluded to City, not only just recently, but in prior episodes too, you got to be buttoned up if you're Liverpool. Is that a concern for you from what you saw today, or do you feel like there's enough firepower to kind of offset that for a little bit until you kind of right the ship?
Yeah. I mean, I think your critiques and your statements are both fair. Liverpool decide to take the road less traveled, like they usually do, with missing sitters and scoring absolute bangers or worldies, like you said. And I mean, seeing that McAllister goal was
oh my
a big
gosh
deal.
Fantastic.
And it was a big deal for me because he's been played out of position a little bit, in my opinion, and he hasn't started his Liverpool career as good as most have wanted him to. But when you score worldies like that, you kind of justify that price tag and why you're starting, every single week for a team like Liverpool. So I think that's going to really jumpstart. And then you see a new midfielder that we signed, Endo, who has gotten a lot of criticism, more criticism than Maka, and he scores an absolute peach when Salah lays him off. So we're seeing some of these new Liverpool players become like almost cult heroes, and that's kind of the start of these kind of goals and these kind of moments are what can define your career and how it gets started. And I expect both in the rest of the new signings to kind of a trajectory to go up from here, especially when they're witnessing these comebacks that they've heard about or seen in the past. Now, when it comes to defensive liabilities, we're missing Allison, so we had our backup keeper in net. We're still missing Robertson for the foreseeable future, and Tsimikas got burned on that third goal. Am I concerned? A little bit, but I think Konate is our second best fully fit center back, and he didn't start again today. I think Matip is a little bit past his prime. And, Joe Gomez at right back has been serviceable as well when asked upon. So maybe we switch, Gomez to left back and do a more defensive approach and give Alexander-Arnold more freedom on the right side. But, I mean, we're even mentioning Trent here. I mean, 2 wonderful goals. He's in great goal scoring form, and this could be his best season yet if he keeps it up.
Yeah, and of course the big question mark for Trent is just defensively how that plays and will that impact. And you're looking to kind of offset some of that offensive firepower with just a little bit of defensive mindedness. And I think that's something that if he can kind of keep growing into that, I know it's been talked about within the dressing room and, within the building, just to get him a little bit more, or where do you kind of play him? Of course, people have talked about playing him more in that midfield role the last couple of years. So it will be interesting. Of course, credit to Fulham who do fight back, although they were leading in this one and gave up the lead. But you still kind of want to give them some credit here to kind of push it to the end, especially in Anfield, a tough place to play. Similar to the Emirates, which completely different environment than if you're playing at Molineux for Arsenal versus Wolves, which was actually a cracker on Saturday. Daniel, there was so much that happened today on Sunday, not only in the Premier League, but across the world of football, that we forget that yesterday Arsenal played and they sit atop the table in the Premier League now, 3 points clear of City, 2 points clear of Liverpool. And that was a 20-minute masterclass against Wolves to begin that match. Arsenal were just absolutely flying on all cylinders to start.
Yeah, no, that first 20 to almost basically the first half, I was thinking to myself, all right, this Arsenal team might completely blow Wolves out of the water, and this could be an ugly result for Gary O'Neill and his men. But, I mean, that second goal, too, one of the best team goals
absolutely,
of the Prem this season. And you see Gabi Jesus, plugging his finger like he couldn't even believe what his compatriots just did. But credit to Wolves, they were able to kind of stay in the match and grab one late to make it a little bit respectable and kind of put some pressure on an Arsenal, and they were able to see the game out, which is kind of a critique that they've had in the past. They do score first and they get up most times, I would say, but can they hold and cruise out those leads? And you see them do it again, and I mean they're legit title contenders for sure. I mean they lead the Prem as of right now. And every team's going to go through blips, and we've seen all 3 of the top 3 go through mini blips. So it's going to be really interesting, and it's going to be I guess what it comes down to, obviously, is like when those teams play each other and the other, couple teams who are kind of competing with them, and that'll kind of shake out the Prem on what happens, I guess.
Yeah, of course, those big matchups will be happening across the board. Spurs are going through it right now where they have a very difficult schedule. City will have that as well as they go through Chelsea, Manchester United, you name it. Every team that has a little, you look at the fixture list and it's never easy. There's always a little bit of a holy shit type of moment within your schedule. And you kind of just want to right the ship as best you can during that time. And Chelsea towards the end of that blip right now with that schedule kind of fixture list, like I said, with Brighton today, get a big result, Daniel, a little nerve wracking. You're still kind of questioning and wondering how mature this Chelsea squad is, more red cards for silly fouls that really kind of put the team behind the eight ball. Luckily get the win at home. But again, you're looking at a team that's still very young, growing in and making things a little bit more difficult than they needed to be.
Yeah, no, and that's 2 games in a row with a red card, or
for your captain, which is you don't. Yeah, that's hard to look at too.
Yeah, so I mean, you guys are pretty lucky that Brighton are banged up and weren't able to kind of put the ball in the back of the net like they usually are. So Pochettino's just got to figure out and how to get this team to be disciplined, because this cannot keep. I mean, this cost you a couple points here and there. That's, between European competition and zero competition at all. So you guys got to kind of work on that. And the best teams are the most disciplined teams. So that's definitely going to be something that Poch is going to be thinking about for the near future.
Yep, and it's going to be an interesting topic across the board for a lot of teams as well, not just for Chelsea with how young they are, but there's a lot going on in the leagues across all of Europe. If you're watching it with ticky-tacky fouls and unnecessary delay of game, yellow cards, and things add up, and these games are important, and every point matters across the league, like Daniel said. And one point is all that can make the difference in as tight as a race that the Bundesliga appears it will be this year, Daniel. Bayer Leverkusen dropped 2 points as they get a draw in the game of the weekend versus Borussia Dortmund this weekend. Any thoughts here? Of course, Bayern Munich, just for those who are not aware, were postponed due to snow. They will make that game up at a later date. But of course, that meant that Bayer Leverkusen could go 3 points clear, and they failed to do that. And that's a little bit concerning for a league that we know how good Bayern Munich are and what they usually tend to do. Was this a big turning point for you, Daniel, in the Bundesliga, with Bayern not getting all 3 points today?
Yeah, in a way, pretty disappointed. I thought Bayer Leverkusen were the better team. Dortmund kind of scored early and then packed it up, and it was waves and waves and waves of Bayer Leverkusen attacks, and they just, could not put the ball in the back of the net from outside the box, inside the box. Midfielders skying over. Grant Xhaka had a couple good opportunities, and he doesn't score many goals, but he's good from outside the box usually. So I'm sure Bayern Leverkusen will be frustrated just on their lack of shooting efficiency. That's been a common theme for them this year. They don't always put away chances, and I mean, they still kill opponents, so it hasn't really come to roost, I guess. But this was kind of the first time you've seen that they didn't finish. They didn't have, that finishing touch, and they were only able to get a draw here. But credit to them, they did fight back. They kept going, and they were at least able to get the draw from a losing position.
Yeah, nice goal by Victor Boniface as well to get the points there. I texted or I mentioned it with the guys at the bar, and I think I told you before we recorded. As soon as this game was a draw to me, I said, unfortunately, there goes the Bundesliga again. It just kind of felt like a game, and we've talked about this before, where the smaller clubs beat each other up. And then kind of leave the door open for Bayern. That's how this game felt, where Bayern just have to be absolutely perfect the rest of the way. Dropping more points will only make this a little bit easier for Bayern. And it's a long way to go. Don't get me wrong. There's still plenty of matches, but we've seen this storyline before. It's, one of those things where that's, we talked about in other leagues where how much pressure is continuing having to win, and the need to have to win build up on you. And by no means have Bayer Leverkusen lost. So just keep that in mind. They're 20 games into the season in all competitions, and they have not lost a match. So pretty strong roster as well still, but when you kind of need to keep the pressure on Bayern just to even keep it close. And that's an interesting one. We'll keep an eye out for. A team that got back on its winning ways though, Stuttgart, who do beat Bremen. Girassi comes back on the pitch after a small injury a couple matches ago and continues his hot streak, getting another goal today. Stuttgart, Daniel, they sit 5 points behind, Leverkusen, 4 points behind Dortmund right now. Stuttgart here to stay. I know we kind of have been talking about it, like we're not sure here, but we're kind of at a pretty extensive part of the campaign. It feels like this team is going to stay up at least for this foreseeable future.
I can confidently now say yes, at least top 4, because when Girassi was carrying the team early in Fulkrug, and Girassi got injured for around a month, and this was when me and you were discussing, all right, what are they going to start slipping up, losing a bunch of games, what's going to happen? And Dennis Undav started in Girassi's spot, which is an ex-Brighton player. He didn't kind of pan out for them, but he's kind of, since Girassi left or was injured, he's kind of gone on a huge goal scoring for him. And he scored in this match again. And now they're starting Girassi and Undav together. So scary for any Bundesliga backline here. And I mean, that coach deserves, he should probably get manager of the year, if not Xabi Alonso, just for what he's done in 1 year of a transformation. But this team is like fundamentally sound. They don't give up many goals, and they sure as hell create a lot. And they're not the most, Grassi's kind of still getting back into form here. So he missed a couple chances. So this could have easily been like kind of a humbling of Bremen here. So I'm liking what I'm seeing with Stuttgart. It's a buy for me.
Yeah, you mentioned, they have plenty of chances. They have 33 goals for, plus 18 goal differential to get tactical here. They're in pretty good spot, even if they, they're 4 points clear of fourth place, and they have that goal differential in their favor. So I'm with you. I think that, they got through the injury bug that always happens to some of these squads without the depth, and they managed to maintain that. And of course they'll have teams like Bayer, RB Leipzig right behind them, and who beat Hoffenheim this weekend. So they're going to continue to push. You have Dortmund, who we alluded to just before, in 5th. So they're going to come for it. They're going to come for that Champions League position, because that's really, they know year in year out that Bayern's probably going to get the title locked up, but let's make sure that we have European football in the future. So that would be a huge tackle for Stuttgart to grab one of those spots. Of course, I mentioned Leipzig, who do beat Hoffenheim. They looked impressive, but it really, something about this team we've talked about before, Daniel, just doesn't really sit with me, and I just can't pinpoint it. Especially a team that I had recommended or suggested we're going to win the Bundesliga earlier this season.
Yeah, we also saw another Matt Gesslin curse here. 10 minutes, you texted me, Leipzig below, direct quote. And they went on and scored a goal almost 2 minutes after you sent me that text. So
it's been done before. It's not a surprise.
This is not, I think this brings the tally of Gesslin curses to 4 now on the season. So I think we'll easily get to double digits by the end of the season, if not by February. But I thought that was funny. But yes, I agree. It's Leipzig, like, keeps you wanting to see more and better performances, playing a little bit better football, because they just have so much talent on that roster. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on it and see kind of what Marco Rose employs with his team, and if he can continue to get the best out of them, or if they kind of slip up in the Bundesliga top 4 race.
Yeah, it will be interesting. You mentioned the talent that roster has. Of course, some players that are hurt, but that talent on that roster should still be better than 4th place in the Bundesliga, in my opinion. And Daniel, we're also looking at the same storyline in 2 teams that played today in La Liga. Of course, that's Barcelona and Atletico Madrid, who are both probably two of the most talented rosters in all of football. If you really look at from position to position. And so this was a clash that is one of the biggest clashes in La Liga. And it did, kind of was a little bit of a spoiler. Barca get the 1-0 win here, much needed win. It's 2 wins on a row after a big win in Champions League against Porto as well. I was surprised, Daniel, at how Atleti needed this match and kind of came out of it a little bit slow out of the gate. And it didn't feel like they really were interested in this one. Alvaro Morata was completely non-existent on the field. Antoine Griezmann didn't really do too much. I was surprised, but I know you're not as high on Atleti as I was or am. Was this a surprise to you, kind of the performance that Diego Simeone's men put out there today?
I mean, we both predicted Atletico Madrid wins here. So, yeah, I knew it was going to be close and it was going to be a low-scoring affair. So, I mean, you did too. So we got that right. But João Felix, scores in the 28th minute. He needed a goal pretty bad, so that's going to be big for his confidence going forward for Barca. And I was looking kind of at the stats, and Barca, dominated the XG, total shots, and shots on target. So I wouldn't say this is a setback, but when you're chasing a team like Madrid, who just seems to never slip up, it definitely hurts if you're an Atletico Madrid fan. But if you're a Barca fan, you're elated that you feel like you can beat the good teams and the big teams.
Yeah, a huge win for Xavi and his men. Of course, you wonder when Robert Lewandowski is going to get his superpowers back from the Monstars. He just cannot find the net, and just seems like a lost player out there. It's one of those things that's a little concerning. He hasn't scored a goal in 6 games since coming back from injury, and just he's getting in position. He looks like he's able to kind of find the places on the field that you would if you're a striker, but it's just you expect him to finish some of these chances that he's had in the last couple of games, and he still hasn't done it yet. People have been wondering what's been going on with him of late. That continued tonight, but they did find a way. João Felix, the man of the night, against his parent company, former club. And so, he kind of shined and stole the spotlight and saved Barca today, because Daniel, I don't think they could have afforded to drop any more points at this point, to be completely honest. I think we've talked about it. I feel like I say this week in, week out, that they cannot drop more points, but really against a team like Atleti, who also would have had a game in hand on them. On top of that, this was a huge win for them and a big performance again after coming out of Champions League and advancing into the knockout stage.
I didn't see the celebration, by the way. Did João go all out, or did he keep it respectful? Do you know?
He went a little bit of both. I don't think he went all out, but he wasn't like he did not celebrate against his parent club. So there was definitely a little bit of a message sent to his old manager, hey, remember me, what I could do. So, but I don't think Simeone was too flustered by it, to be honest.
I'm sure he made eye contact and like you were kind of asking with Lewandowski, kind of what's going on here. Well, kind of like you, he's old as shit. So maybe we're starting to see the
be something. There must be a correlation there. Got
it. With his decline, and maybe he's lost a step or what, and maybe he can't. He's still a good player. Let's not kid ourselves. But playing on top 3 biggest clubs in the world, I'm not sure about that. Also, he and Gavi's partnership and duo, they worked really well together. We're on the same page and assisted a lot. And I think the Gavi absence is he's struggling with that. So it's going to be up to who he finds, who he can work off of and trust. But I just wanted to give a little insight on that.
Yeah, and one thing I want to call out too, and you don't hear much about this storyline, but I don't know, I'm sensing a trend with him and just how good of a defender he is. Ronald Araujo, absolutely shut down Alvaro Morata, like I said earlier. Not only does he do this against a player like Morata, but when you look at El Clasico and they put him up straight up one-on-one against Vinicius Jr., he does not do much either. Vinicius Jr., that is. So, just one of those things to recognize that, Araujo is a really good defender. You also
top
have,
3.
top 3 defender for sure. You also have that midfield that's getting, a little healthier. Frankie de Jong looked really good. Pedri came in and kind of started to feel like he was kind of back into play there. And it lets Gundogan do a few other things, roam a little bit more, kind of be that facilitator that he was brought in for. So I think you're starting to see Barca kind of find it a little bit. But it would be nice if you're looking at Robert Lewandowski putting the ball in the back of the net and stepping up and getting you those goals. A player though, Daniel, that we've been kind of talking about a little bit and has been stepping up lately is of course Rodrigo for Madrid, who continues to score and get, more confidence in the way that he's playing. Of course, Brahim Diaz gets the second goal in that game or the first goal, the second of one of the two. And of course, Madrid go on to win 2-0 in a big matchup against Granada and keep that pressure on Girona, who also take care of business against Valencia. And I know you watched that one. Any thoughts on this battle? This is obviously the battle right now between these two clubs, and don't look now, but a big matchup on Saturday for Girona, who get Barcelona, one of their second biggest tests of the year.
Yeah. First, Rodrigo has had 12 goal contributions in his last 6 matches. I retweeted that from ESPN FC on our Twitter. So, I mean, with Vinicius Jr. out and not really a striker, he's like the key attacker right now. And then Brahim Diaz, kind of filling in for injured players right now. He kind of didn't make it at Madrid and then went to Milan and made a name for himself. And now he's back and he's kind of hit the ground running in Madrid. And I think he's enjoying life. And that goal he scored, I mean, it was a good goal by him, but that pass by Toni Kroos, man, just
still got it. He's
class
still
is
got
permanent.
it.
Class is permanent. And he's supposed to retire at the end of the season. I'm going to be really interested to see if he just renews for one more season or he goes and enjoys, California and do some MLS there or something like that. But man, those Madrid Galacticos, even with their old age, like Luka Modric and Toni Kroos, they just still on a weekly basis just drop masterclasses. So wanted to mention Toni Kroos because he doesn't get much credit, I'd say, through the Madrid years, but he's been one of the best players and definitely one of the most consistent players for Madrid during their dominance era. Now, when it comes to Girona, same story every single time. They go down 1-0, and then they score 2 goals past the 75th minute to win the game. Christian Suwani, he's pretty old, but came on to be the hero to keep them top, or actually they're technically, I guess, second. They were top when they won the game. But now they are tied with Madrid. They are second off goal differential, but they've scored the most goals in the league. And I highly recommend that if you subscribe to The Athletic to read the article that was published about Girona and their ascent to La Liga. It's very interesting, and it was a joy for me to read this week.
Yeah, you mentioned, of course, the ageless wonder coming on and getting 2 goals off the bench. Of course, just to point out that there's a theme here that old is not the worst thing in the world, Daniel. But that's neither here nor there. But we'll see. Interesting. It is interesting to see. You'll say that you'll learn in age. You'll learn in time, my friend. It is interesting to see, that Girona continues to battle and fight at the top there with Madrid. Of course, we've talked about this and just how long will that last, and they still are continuing to build themselves a nice cushion between the second and third, regardless of what happens. They have 4 points on Barcelona now. Again, a huge matchup coming up on Saturday between these two that really, for me, will we saw what happened when Girona played Madrid. If they continue to lose points or get blown out against the big teams, that's when you get a little bit concerned about whether this team can go all the way. But if they can find a way to get a draw against Barca, or even somehow squeak out a win, I think you're looking at a team that could be here for maybe the top 4 this year, but also longer term, especially, you mentioned the article, just what they're planning to do at Girona. It's a great story. I think that this squad is here for the long haul, not necessarily, just this year, but will they be successful this year? Possibly, probably not. But I think Girona is a team that you're looking out for the long term, which is great to see. And then, it's a wonder kind of where do they fall? I think they do find a way to fall down to 4th, but I do think that they stay within the top 4.
Yeah, I think definitely top 5 is a safe bet. Their recruitment has been insane, with the likes of Savio, Dubovnik, Tagash. Oh, God, I can't say the Ukraine right winger. Just to name a few, I mean, they resurrected the center mid from the City group. Can't remember his name, but he's the captain of the team. Kind of resurrected Eric Garcia's career. They got a bunch of young talent, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens to that squad and how depleted it gets after the season. But credit to the coach, him as well, will probably be a highly sought after man. So it'll be interesting to see, but it seems like it's a well-run club and, it's plug and play, kind of like a Brighton scenario. They could be the Brighton of La Liga. That's kind of my comparison to them.
Could be worse things to be compared to for sure, especially with the success that Brighton have had of late. You mentioned a well-run club, Daniel, and want to go back into a different league now, going over to Serie A, and a team that seems to kind of be riding the ship, getting their act together. Of course, that is Inter Milan, who not only are top the table but have been honestly the one of the top teams, if not the top team in Serie A now for it feels like a decade, of course, alongside Juventus and AC Roma. But Inter continue to be that same squad that are always up there fighting, of course, semifinal of the Champions League last year. And they took on Napoli, who the title holders from last year. And they said, you know what, Napoli, we're going to take this back from you. And they absolutely crushed Napoli this weekend, Daniel, 3-0. What was your main takeaway from this one? You mentioned some elders earlier. There were some elders in this one that got and put up some performances as well. But what was your main takeaway for Inter, who now clearly continue to just muscle the big teams that they kind of are fighting against?
Like Napoli, Matt is probably pretty salty at that comment I made earlier, but basically Inter just came into the Maradona and absolutely just crushed them in front of their fans. And you can't let that happen at home. Away is a different story, but for someone to come into your own house and kill you like that, that's tough. And, Inter are a well-oiled machine here. A full display of talent with Thuram, Martinez, Barella, Kalahanglu all getting on the goal sheet from assist to goals. They have a fantastic roster, and they have not lost to one of the top 4 or 5 teams yet. They've gotten draws, but they still haven't lost. And it's going to be really interesting to see if someone's going to be able to knock them off their perch. I slept on them last year, and then they ended up going to the Champions League final and gave City a hell of a match. So Inzaghi knows what he's doing. The recruitment's there. But, I mean, I don't know if you know about it, but they're also in a world of debt. So them winning
they are in a world of debt.
They basically completely collateralized their entire future with like an American firm. So I think winning would help them with that debt, obviously. And they definitely need to go far in the Champions League, or there could be some massive repercussions for Inter Milan. But credit to them this weekend.
Yeah, you mentioned Champions League. Of course, they're in good shape there as well, and in first place in Serie A, like you mentioned, dominating the rivals against them, which is what you want to do. If you can take care of those teams, you should theoretically beat the bottom table teams and separate yourself. And we're starting to see that. Daniel, though, one of the teams that is making a little bit of move. Don't look now. I told you this before. We went from 11th to 7th to 4th. That is Jose Mourinho's Roma, who leapfrogged Napoli with that loss to Inter and Roma's win this weekend. They are now sitting in a Champions League spot, Daniel. I mean, what can you say about the job that Jose Mourinho has done here and the way that this Roma team is performing? It's obviously early, and they have, multiple fronts with Europa as well, part of their schedule, but this team is kind of impressive right now if you look at them at the way they're in form right now.
Especially with how they started the season. They did get bailed out with a red card, and they were able to just score 2 kind of in the last 20 minutes. And Roma always seemed to leave it late too. So we'll see if that's a sustainable way to play football. But hey, I mean, they started, I think the lowest point was like 16th, and now they're 4th. So never count the special one out. I know you're a big fan of him as I am as well. This is his last year in Roma. I think he wants to go out on a high note. And he's got Lukaku and Dybala kind of firing on all cylinders right now. So I think 4th is probably as high as it gets. Maybe they leapfrog AC Milan, but I think the two, Juventus and Inter, are there to stay. So, but even getting 3rd would be a huge accomplishment for Roma, and them being in the Champions League next season would be really cool, because I feel like it's been a while since we've seen that happen.
It would be tough for them, of course, to catch AC Milan, who do get a get right win this weekend and move 5 points clear of them and kind of secure that 3rd spot. I'm with you totally on that. Christian Pulisic as well with a goal in that game and looked really well.
That goal,
great
so
goal,
nice.
Great ball out from the keep and great touch and just puts it in the back of the net. And like I said, a great goal all around. Of course, Juventus beat Monza on Friday, so they continue to kind of solidify that top 2 spot there with Inter and keep in distance. But I'm with you, Daniel. I think 4th for Roma, maybe outside shot at 3rd, but you look at the way that they've started the season to where they are now, it's pretty remarkable. And another team that is in that same boat as we shift to the rest of the broader world here is Ajax, who continue to climb up the Eredivisie. They get another result here this weekend, Daniel, and now they're within single digits next to their name, which looked insurmountable and unachievable about 6 weeks ago. And they're currently in 8th place, 18 points with a game in hand still that has to be added to their tally. So theoretically, the way the table sits right now, you're looking at 6th. What a remarkable turnaround for this squad from, like I said, 6 weeks ago.
And they're trusting the youth. And I went ahead and I didn't run the average, but I checked and clicked on, every person in the starting lineup just to see the average age. And other than Steven Berghaus, who's 31, which I did not realize he was that old. And age. Yep, another age comment there. And Bergwijn, who's 26. Every other player was under 22. I think averaging 20. That is not normal. Their center back is 17. But I mean, just they're trusting the youth, they're trusting the process, the Ajax way. And I mean, there's some really good players on this team, and I don't think they'll be there for very long. So I think Ajax are back. Keep an eye out for them. I'm a big fan personally of giving youngsters the chance, and that's kind of what Ajax did, especially in a tough situation. And their kind of bet has bailed, or not bailed, but paid off so far.
Yeah, you mentioned the Ajax way. It's definitely right up their alley, and it's good to see them back. I alluded to it, one of the biggest clubs, regardless of you view them, in other leagues. They are still one of the biggest, most important clubs in the world. So it's good to see them fighting back. And of course, Daniel, the other big game in the Eredivisie was PSV versus Feyenoord, which of course I just dismissed right away and said 3-0 to PSV in our prediction show on Thursday. If you haven't checked that episode out, feel free to go check it out. We do a Thursday episode as well where we preview all the upcoming fixtures for you. Boy, was I wrong on this one. PSV do get the result, but it was a scrappy win. But again, a win's a win, and now they kind of have some significant breathing room at the top of the table in the Eredivisie, which was kind of to be expected a little bit.
I was so close to being right on this one. I said 3-1 with a last-second goal to make it seem like a beatdown, but it wasn't. So I wish they got that stoppage time win. But yeah, PSV, they win ugly. Santi Jimenez continues his goal scoring form. And I mean, at this rate, he might not even be on the squad past January. So that's a transfer rumor mill to keep your eye out on. And another one is, when will Ricardo Pepi overtake De Jong for the number 9 spot? Because he's averaging a goal contribution every 70 minutes at this rate.
Another great performance from an American this weekend, and continuing to see it in Europe, which is great. And Of course, Daniel, a team that did not have a great performance was Nice. We've talked about Nice and kind of their chase to keep up with the behemoth that is PSG. That pressure finally mounted to be too much for Nice, and they drop points while PSG win with 10 men and now have a 4-point gap. There, Mbappe getting a goal in that one as well. So comfortable yet to say that this one's wrapped up, or do you feel like Monaco, who do win and keep chase, they're 5 points back? Do you feel like there's still a race in Liga, or
it's wrapped? It's done, unfortunately. And Gigi Donnarumma got a red card pretty early in this match, so maybe if Le Havre were able to muster up and get 3 points, we'd maybe be having a different conversation. But it would take a lot for this PSG team to lose Ligue 1. It's going to be interesting how they navigate the Champions League. That's really what I'm looking out for right now. But when it comes to Ligue 1, nah. But credit to Monaco, at least in Nice, it's been a valiant effort, and they get a participation trophy. But to kind of rotate over to our side, where football is played, MLS final.
It's called soccer here. It's called soccer here, Daniel.
Yeah. Whatever. But just real quick before we talk about U.S. soccer, U.S. players abroad had actually a really good weekend. So, Chris Richards finally got a start. Mark McKenzie got an assist. Pulisic, was a key player from Milan. I could go on, but just wanted to highlight that Americans are starting to play really good ball in some of the best teams in the entire world. So want to shout that out. But yes, Columbus beats Cincinnati. Cincinnati actually go up 2, and Columbus fight all the way back and score in stoppage or in extra time to knock the league or the Eastern Conference
Community Shield winners, I think, or whatever you call it.
I couldn't remember. I don't even know it because Charlotte FC never competes for it. So how would I know?
They would never. So that's a good point.
But yeah, so I think I picked Columbus, you picked Cincy, so suck it.
Yep, got that one wrong. One wrong. Of course, whenever I bet, right, Daniel, we've clearly seen there's a threat here.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was a good game, 5-goal thriller. Not really much you can ask for. And then LAFC beat Houston 2-0, pretty comfortable win for them. So we'll do a prediction for who wins on the next show, but wanted to highlight those results here. And after the break, we'll have XI of the week, player of the week, young player of the week, and a slight preview for the Premier League games. So just real quick, make sure you like, subscribe, follow our Twitter account at Fulltime Roundup, and give us a comment. Let us know who was on your XI of the week and who was your player of the week, and we'd love to hear from you. So after the break, we'll kind of hit all that stuff.
And we're back on the Full-Time Roundup. Daniel alluded to it before the break that we're going to get into our players of the week. This is one of our favorite segments on the show. Of course, please let us know on Twitter or at X at Full-Time Roundup your players of the week. If we made any mistakes, we probably did. If we left out some players, of course, like we've alluded to, there's so many players here and so many games, it's hard to keep track. We try to do the best that we can. Just again, to recap and give you a download of how we do this, Daniel and I picked these 11 players together. These are the players that we think would make our 11 for the week. And of course, our formation is 3-4-3 with one goalie. So that way we are focused a little bit more on the stats offensively, but we do keep in mind players that are just absolutely balling out there on the field. If they just own a game and they maybe don't hit the score sheet, but you can see that they just control the game, we try and include those guys as well. So without further ado, Daniel, please take us through a goalkeeper and defenders.
Thank you, Matt. So for goalkeeper, Inaki Peña for Barcelona, replacing Ter Stegen here. Clean sheet with a big win. That kind of pencils you in to the goalkeeper of the week for us. For defenders, we have first Gatti with the game winner against Juventus. This game was pretty wild. It was 1-0 all the way until the stoppage time, and then Monza scored, and then Gatti scored a great goal. Number 2, Jake O'Brien, a guy who I really, he wasn't on my radar until he got to Lyon, and he's been scoring a lot recently, but he had 2 goals as a center back for Lyon. They did lose, but I mean, when you score 2 goals as a center back, it's a pretty damn good day. And then last but not least, Boscagli, the center back for PSV, scored the game winner as well on that matchup against Feyenoord. So shout out to him. Matt, lead us off and do the midfield.
Yeah, midfielder I'm glad to put on this list, although I don't think he had the greatest performance, but 2 goals. You have to add Enzo Fernandez, one with the penalty, of course. Our next midfielder is from Lens, Frankowski, who had 2 goals in that match as well. Martin Odegaard, of course, for Arsenal, 1 goal, but also does more than just the 1 goal. You look at him and you know he's boss in the midfield, and one of those players that's going to be on our list, or at least close to the top of player of the week in, week out, just with how good and important he is for Arsenal. And our last midfielder is Mohamed Kudus, who continues to get on the score sheet, this time with a goal in this matchup, and is one of the best players for West Ham, honestly, Daniel. I know we've talked about it, and just why he hadn't started right away when he came in was kind of, I don't know. I couldn't really figure it out, but he's been fantastic since he's been on the pitch since then. Up front, what can we say about this man? He pretty much did everything in this match. He had a goal, he had an assist, he had an own goal. I thought he was going to score all the goals somehow. Heung-min Son for Spurs, of course, in their 3-3 draw. What a crazy start for the match for him, but again, continues to deliver. Guirassy for Stuttgart, penalty, 1 goal, add him to the list. The next one is a surprise, Daniel. I had to dig deep for this one, especially if we're looking at the forward position, which is about goals. Ferdy Družev from Zwolle in Eredivisie. I may have completely butchered that last pronunciation of his last name.
That was pretty solid.
I did the best I could. He had a hat trick off the bench as they brought in him off the bench to come back from a 2-goal deficit, and he gets a hat trick. So when you do that, you're on my starting 11, that's for sure, especially at the striker position. Players of the week for me, Daniel, a young player, could have been on the young player of the week list as well. Just the way he's been performing and delivering week in, week out is Anthony Gordon for Newcastle. Just he gets the game winner in their match against Manchester United as well, but he's been fantastic for them and really showing the Geordie spirit every time he plays and is on the pitch. You can see that the Geordies love him, and it's just one of their own already at this point in his career, which is a big step up from him for how things ended at Everton. And you always want to root for young players to do well. So he's my player of the week, the way he stepped up in this one.
Could agree more with that. And he had a rough start to his Newcastle career last season too, so he's kind of rebounded pretty well. For mine, Trent Alexander-Arnold, future Liverpool captain here. He's just been putting in an absolute shift week in, week out, and he scored a dime of a free kick in the game winner. So shout out to you, Trent. You're the man.
Young player of the week. Go ahead, take us through. Go ahead. You have an interesting one first.
So this one, I'm sure some of our national team supporters have heard of this name, Amir Richardson. He is technically eligible to represent the United States, 21 years old, but he is playing for Morocco currently. But he plays in Ligue 1, and he got a goal. He's like a center mid, more attacking mid. He's a really solid player, and I'd love – he kind of would be like a missing piece for us, national team speaking wise. So I don't think he's going to end up playing for us, but he's been a fantastic player that I've been monitoring. And it's going to be interesting. This is his first season in Ligue 1, and he's kind of hit the ground running. So it's going to be interesting to see how he keeps progressing, I guess.
Yeah, my pick is another Newcastle player. It feels weird now that I look at it. I had 2 players of the week on Newcastle, but for me, the way that Eddie Howe has gotten this team to play with the injuries they've had and the schedule and just the way that they've fought back, I thought it was fitting for both of these players to be on here for me. And for my young player of the week was Lewis Miley, 17-year-old, who's just come in, got his first start in a Champions League game the other night and really didn't look out of place. And then, had a great performance as well against Manchester United on Saturday and in their win there. So, again, the way that Newcastle are playing and just the way that they They need a player like him to step in with their injury situation and how he's delivered against 17 years old against, arguably one of the biggest clubs in the world in Manchester United, as well as a Champions League start midweek. So for me, Lewis Miley, young player of the week. Now, Daniel, we normally wouldn't do this on the show but there are some funky schedules this week, and the Premier League has midweek games Tuesday through Thursday. As of course, we'll start to see some changes in the schedule for holiday fixtures here with the holidays approaching and how many games are around that. So we did want to do a quick preview of the Premier League games this week. We've picked 4. But again, this is not going to be the norm. We'll have another show on Thursday as well as part of our more fully prediction show that we'll get the rest of the domestic calendar on there for you guys. But again, quickly, 4 Premier League games. So Daniel, I'll fire off first to you. Wolves versus Burnley. Who do you got?
I'm going to say a draw. I put this one down just because this is kind of not a relegation scrap, but 2 teams that are in the bottom half of the table that are, every win matters, especially against, teams in that area. So I thought that was good to. Burnley finally got a piece together, a couple of wins and draws. So they're in good form, and Wolves they're not getting exactly the results they want, but they're playing good football. So I thought this is an interesting result here. I'm going to say 1-1.
At Molineux, so it's tougher for Burnley to continue that momentum, although they looked really good. I thought this could have been a game that would have set up nicely for them to get some points, but I'm with you. 1-1 for me at Molineux will be a good result for Vincent Kompany and men.
I wouldn't be surprised, though, if Wolves get the result, though. Let me see.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And so number 2, we have Villa versus City. City coming off 3 consecutive draws. Aston Villa did play decent this weekend. They did tie Bournemouth away from home, but Villa are unstoppable at home. So this should be an interesting matchup. What do you think, Matt?
Boy, this is a big one. Man, City, they still score. They just have a few, defensive mishaps in the back. And can Villa be as offensively efficient as the other teams that have put the ball in the back of the net against City so far in this draw streak? 2-1 City.
2-1 City. Yeah, I mean, historically, Aston Villa have played City pretty well. I think they actually beat City last year towards the end of the season. I'm going to agree with you on the result, though. 2-1 City here. They need a win.
They do need a win. They need to win badly, and I think they find a way. Big one at Old Trafford, Daniel. We didn't really touch on Manchester United. I feel like there's enough been going around, and we talk about them enough that we'll definitely cover this match and preview on Thursday's show. But Chelsea, go to Old Trafford. What's your take on this one, and how does Erik ten Hag get his men ready?
I'm going to say Chelsea win in a scrappy affair, probably like a 2-1 game.
I'll take 2-1 as well. Of course, Reece James back from suspension, Mark Cucurella back from suspension. No Conor Gallagher in this one, but sorry.
Oh no, Thiago's. It was. Yeah, you're right. Reece James was the one who got the red card.
Yeah, Reece James, and no Conor Gallagher, but I do think that Chelsea have enough. I think 2-1 as well. The fact that we're agreeing on this many games, I don't like. I'll take 2-1. I'll take 2-1 City. Chelsea. The last game, Daniel, for me, Spurs. They do get this big result against West Ham at home. I think they get a 1-0 result. Just coming out of this game puts a little bit of momentum, but West Ham are good. That's not a discredit to anything that Tottenham don't do. I think 1-0 against a very good David Moyes West Ham team is a good result, especially with all the injuries. And the City game is easy to hype yourself up for and get ready for and play. I think it's a little bit tougher when you're just came over that hurdle and now you have to do it again against West Ham. So I do think a little bit less lackluster performance, but 1-0 Spurs.
I'm going a draw here. 1-1. I just don't think, I don't know. I feel like Spurs will fly high, but not much rest. Big dramatic game. This is a good letdown spot for them.
It is Thursday, so they do get a day. But yes, I agree. It's going to be a tough one, but I do still think they get the W there. And of course, no best bets this week, as this is a weird, funky schedule. We just haven't gotten around to them, but Daniel will be posting any bets that he makes on our Twitter or X, which is at Fulltime Roundup. You can follow those and get those bets there. Again, please download, like, subscribe, listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating. It goes a long way. We'll have another show this week on Thursday, of course, like we always do. So check that out. We'll be covering all the domestic fixtures. We'll probably recap some of these Premier League games since they are going to have some major implications to the title race as well. But we'll be back on Thursday with you guys. And of course, please interact with us on Twitter and X wherever you want to. We're looking forward to another great week of fixtures, and we'll see you on Sunday.